All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jenna Wood, and I am one of the dietitians here with the Giant Company, so Giant and Martin Supermarkets. If you are new to our classes, welcome. I'm so glad you are here. And of course, if you are a returning customer, welcome back. If you are fairly new to our classes or haven't been with us for a while, we've kind of did a little shifting to our Monday classes. We're still doing meal inspiration. However, we wanted to kind of always go back to what's on sale, what's in our circular, so that, you can find meals and recipes that fit your budget, but also your lifestyle, and maybe some things that you had never thought to try that are in the ad this week. So we call that class Flyer to Fork. So we are going to get into that. So today for Flyer to Fork, as we kind of always do, we are going to talk about the weekly ad with a focus of actually looking at it towards the end. We're going to talk about recipe inspiration, of course, using savory. And then we're going to bring it to life with a recipe today. And I really think today's recipe will be quite unique, and hopefully you'll want to give it a try. Now, how do you find the weekly ad? Many people, of course, already know how to do this. However, just as a refresher, there are typically about four ways to find that circular. So the weekly ad can either be in your mailbox. Now, I couldn't take a photo in your mailbox, but hopefully you receive it typically on Wednesday or Thursday, the week before it starts, or the days before it starts. However, if you don't, there's a million other ways to get it. So, of course, if you go into our stores, they're normally on a nice rack right as you enter the front door. But you can also, and honestly, in this digital age, there's so many benefits to looking at the weekly ad online. So you can either do that on our website or in our app. Now, on our website, of course, this is typically the landing page. It'll either say Giant or Martin's. And there's a couple different ways to access it, of course. But the main one, you just click here and it will say weekly ad. When you click on that, it'll go to a page. Depending on the day of the week, it might say, look at this week's or a preview of next week's, depending on what, day it is. And you can look at it as a full page view or as a grid view. So the page view is what we're going to look at today, and it really just shows you everything nicely laid out by department and all of these things. But grid view is also nice if you really just kind of want to get down to bare bones, what's on sale, what's in the ad this week. So depending on your preference, I'll sometimes look at it both ways. There's more details, obviously, on the page view, but totally your preference. And of course, again, it is also in our circular. I mean, I have a fairly large iPhone, but it still can be a little hard to look at it. But if you're already at the store or maybe you're out and about and you want to, do your weekly recipe and meal planning for the week, you truly can view it so nicely here. And just like on the website, you can click on things in the ad. If there's a digital coupon you need to load or any details you need to read, it's really nice to be able to view it this way as well. Same print or page view and grid view you can view on here as well. There's a couple ways to open it. It's typically either on the save page, which is that middle icon on the bottom of the app, or if you're on the main, you just open the app, you typically can find it right there as well. And if you're not familiar with finding recipes utilizing our website, there are so many recipes. Now, I will say we're using grapes today, and it's a little tricky to search recipes for grapes, the actual fruit, because there's also grape tomatoes. So you're going to have to kind of sift through if you're looking for grape recipes. However, we do have a bunch. I've linked to the Giant and Martin Savory, so if you want to check that out. Of course, there are so many ways to filter your recipes, which we've talked about in previous classes. You can filter by guiding stars, so finding those better for you recipes. But you can also filter by items you don't like. Like maybe you want the recipe to include chicken, or you want the recipe to not have cilantro, which today's recipe has cilantro because it's a personal favorite of mine, but we'll talk through things you can do. So just a lot of ways, and not a lot of recipe websites have this customizability and filtering system. So definitely a great place to turn to. And if you're shopping from our website, you can click on these recipes and add them directly to your cart. So it's pretty seamless. All right, we've got more to talk about, but I do want to dive into our recipe because it's not a difficult recipe, there's just a lot of moving parts. So, today, our class, we are talking about grapes from California, which you're going to hear about, a lot about grapes this week. But I am making a grape salsa, which this recipe on savory you will see is served on salmon, but I know Charlotte made salmon last week. Now, you can make it on salmon. I have made that recipe before. So delicious. So if you're a big fish person or are looking for more ways to add fish to your diet, follow that recipe as is. But I'm going to shake it up again based on what's on sale in the ad this week. Grape salsa can be served as, a side. You could eat it with chips, but truly it is such a fantastic way to flavor different types of proteins. Now, in the ad this week, again, at the end, we'll skim through the ad and see what else is going on. But for our recipe today, pulled out a couple items. Now, prices, availability may vary depending on your store, the date you go shopping, and of course, your shopping method. So you're doing it online, ordering through another website, or in person. Now, there's a lot of chicken on sale this week. So if you like chicken or want to stock up on chicken and maybe freeze some, it is the week to do that, especially if you like our Nature's Promise chicken, which I will say is quite delicious. So we have, this is just two of the chickens. I am actually using our Nature's Promise chicken breast fillets that come in like an individually portioned baggie, which I will show you. It comes with six breasts, and they're a nice size. Like sometimes, you buy chicken breasts and they're like gymongous, which is fine, especially if you're serving a lot of people. But a really nice, tender chicken breast, these are great for that. And especially if you're somebody who's cooking for one, maybe two, you can break off however many you need and either refrigerate or even freeze the rest of them. So that's the chicken I'm using. However, we do have a great digital coupon for the rest of our Nature's Promise fresh chicken breasts that include like tenders and thinly sliced as well. Now, what else am I making with my recipe with the chicken? So we have two different types of grapes on sale this week. The California Red seedless grapes, which are our dietitian pick for this month. Perfect for salsa because it does kind of sort of represent the tomato of the salsa. However, we do also have a digital coupon for the green, and I love both. I love all grapes, but I am using a little bit of both for my salsa today, just to add some flavor and color variety. And then there are hard squashes, so we're getting into that winter. Ugh, I don't like winter, but we're getting into that season of hard squash as opposed to summer squash like zucchini and yellow squash. So we have things like acorn, butternut, and spaghetti squash. So I figured I'd use spaghetti squash. I know it can be kind of intimidating to use some of these winter squashes. So since they're on sale, I wanted to utilize that too. I have tons, and we'll send out the PDF of the recap after class today, but I kind of switched up the recipe, so I want to explain this. So the grape salsa, I'm going to serve it over that chicken and spaghetti squash. The recipe calls for a pound of protein. However, cook however much protein you need to feed your family, whatever you want, because this recipe really can be meal prepped quite easily. So whatever you're making, whether it's chicken, salmon, we have pork recipes with grapes that are fantastic, but also plant-based items like tofu or tempeh would work with this too. The salsa, so we're going to use those red grapes from California with a couple green or they say white grapes thrown in, a jalapeno, green onions, cilantro, red wine vinegar, and garlic. Ingredients you'll typically find in other salsas. I'm going to basically follow the recipe, but to taste, maybe I want more cilantro. Certainly, if you don't like cilantro, you could leave it out, or even a flat leaf parsley would substitute quite nicely too. And then optional sides. So even the salmon and the salsa recipe, it doesn't really, have a side, but I think it needs something else. So when we talk about meal planning, we typically like three food groups. So we have fruit from our salsa, we have protein from that chicken, and I want something else, whether it's a vegetable or some type of starch or grain. So you could do rice, noodles, quinoa, mashed cauliflower, or potatoes. A sweet potato puree, I think would be delicious. I'm doing roasted squash, so I'll talk through that. But we also have salad kits on sale this week. I'm a huge fan of sauteed spinach, so really sky's the limit with whatever you want to serve this with. In terms of directions, so you're going to roast that chicken and the spaghetti squash. I kind of did a little investigating to see how we could cook them both at the same time and temperature. So what we're gonna do, and these are the directions that are actually printed on the bag, which I have the bag somewhere, the baggie of the chicken breasts. These are the directions that are on the back, and I actually linked to the item on Giant's website because it's in the description on there too. So they recommend cooking the chicken if you're doing it in the oven because you could do it in a skillet. There's a million ways you can cook chicken, of course. But if you're going to roast it, they recommend 425 for about 18 to 20 minutes. And they recommend an internal temperature of 170, which most chicken, it's at least 165. So keep that in mind. For the spaghetti squash, now we have recipes using halves or rings, really however you want to cook the spaghetti squash. I am doing, I think they're so teeny tiny. I will show you. I picked really small ones, so I'm actually just going to cut them in half. But rings, especially if it's a really big spaghetti squash, the rings are very pretty to do too. What we're going to do is actually, I've already cut a couple pierced it with, it says a fork or a knife a couple times so it does not explode in the microwave. So I'm gonna pop it in my microwave for like, it says 4 to 5 minutes. For a baby one like this, you don't need that long. It was almost fully cooked at 5 minutes. So I'm gonna I'm going to do 3 minutes just to kind of see, just to start the cooking process so that you don't need like 50 minutes in the oven, so that the chicken and the squash should cook around the same time. Both are going to be 425, so that's good. I will say at 425, the chicken did take like exactly 20 minutes, so that was kind of perfect. While all of that is roasting, that's when you can prepare the salsa. However, you can also prep this ahead of time and keep it in the fridge for a couple days. Like I wouldn't keep it too many days because the grapes will start to kind of soften more than you want. Because I think it's nice to have that crunch. But basically, we're gonna chop everything up, combine it in a bowl once we get everything in the oven. And then we're going to serve it all together. So I'm going to remove the chicken and the squash from the oven. I'll show you how to scrape the spaghetti squash and different ways to serve it. We're going to plate it with the chicken and the salsa right on top. Some highlights before we dive into the recipe. It is really quite a fresh, flavorful recipe. And again, very versatile if you want to do different proteins. Um, but what I love about grapes is that they really can complement so many different flavors. Yes, grapes are sweet, and you can continue to just have it sweet. However, it does pair so nicely with sour flavors, salty, bitter, umami, whatever flavors you want to pair it with. They really do pair quite nicely. So we're going to have a little saltiness, a little sour, but really, again, and then chicken, a little umami as well. This is quite a unique take on salsa, of course. Normally you use tomatoes. However, there are so many different salsas out there with different fruits. So I think this is such a fun way to use grapes and to try a different salsa. And it could be a great way. Maybe your children don't, or maybe you don't love tomatoes, especially fresh tomatoes. So you don't eat a lot of salsas. Maybe this is a way to kind of skirt around that and try salsa another way. But again, this can be utilized as a snack, but also with chicken, pork, fish. Oh, like a fish taco with this would be phenomenal. Or again, vegetarian proteins. And it can be meal prepped and served later. So maybe you're going to eat a portion now, but you're going to cook enough chicken and maybe the spaghetti squash and make enough of the salsa to have it for lunch the next day or whatever you want. So just to touch on grapes from California a little bit, and actually I do have a poll. I'm so bad at polls, but I do have one, or I think I have two. Um, let's see. Have you ever made a grape salsa? I know it's not super common, so I'd love to hear if you have. So either yes, no, but you want to give it a try, or no, it doesn't sound like your cup of tea. And that's okay. There's so many other ways to eat grapes, but I thought this was a fun way. I'm going to leave that up while I get. So I have the spaghetti squash. It just steamed a little bit. It's going to make it a lot easier to cut through. And it just, quickened cooking time a little. So we're going to put that to the side so it cools a little before I have to cut it. All right, let me end the poll. Share the results. 7 people have tried a grape salsa. That's so great. But 158, so a huge portion of people are hoping to make it, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And I actually do have one more poll. Might as well launch it now. So, what percentage of US table grapes, so grapes that you would eat and snack on, not for wine, are grown in California? What do you think? We're going to talk about it in like 3 seconds, but is it 10, is it 25, 55, or 99% of table grapes are grown in California? Give it a couple more seconds. So, again, table grapes, when we say that, we just mean grapes you're going to eat in this way and not ones for wine. I'm going to end that poll. Most people said 55%. Okay. With some answering all across the board. So I will share in just a moment. Let me turn off the polls. Perfect. Okay. So grapes from California. California table grapes are harvested a large portion of the year because California has such a nice growing region in the Coachella and the San Joaquin valleys. So it can grow from basically May to December. Over 89 varieties of grapes are grown, which you're probably becoming more and more familiar with unique varieties. But 99% of commercially grown table grapes are grown in California. So if you're eating a grape right now, odds are pretty darn good that you're eating a grape that was grown in California. We're going to touch a lot on this the next, couple days, but research shows that grape consumption can help support heart health, gut health, immune health, brain health. They're quite good for our bodies, and healthy aging as well. So if you want to learn more about table grapes throughout the week, join us tomorrow for Produce Spotlight and Friday for Feature Friday. We're going to talk a lot about grapes, and I think you'll be excited to, maybe snack on some more or make them into more fun recipes. Speaking of recipes, we have quite a ton on Savory, but we also will link to the California Grape website where they have tons of recipes as well. So kind of just showcasing here more chicken recipes, pork. You can make it into salads, of course, lots of great ways. And before I start on our recipe, what's coming up, as I mentioned on tomorrow, Tuesday, we have Produce Spotlight about grapes. Wednesday, Joni will talk about Philly sports. And Friday, I have Feature Friday with grapes from California. So make sure you tune into those if you have not registered yet. Alrighty. So we are going to start. Okay, there we go. Let me see. Spotlight. All right, perfect. So let me just pull up my slides so that I remember the ratios. Okay, perfect. So for our recipe today, as I kind of already showed, he's still a little bit warm, but here's our spaghetti squash. We're going to take him, put him on the cutting board. He's a little wonky, but I'm just going to take a nice big knife. And since we put it in the microwave, honestly, you could start to feel some soft spots. It's going to cut very easily. Now, depending on how you want to make it, you can either cut across in like 1-inch sections to do the rings, or you can cut lengthwise this way and make kind of like, not zucchini, spaghetti squash boats. Now, depending on which way you cut, it will also depend on how long the spaghetti strings will be. So if you do it this way, they're going to be a little bit shorter. This way, they'll be a little bit longer, I believe. I may have said that backwards. So I think I already roasted one. So that one I did lengthwise. So this one I think I'm actually going to do into rings. It is still a little bit hot. So you definitely want to let it cool down a little. Out of the microwave. Look how pretty. This is a super teeny tiny one. There were ones like 3 times the size of this. Okay. For the sake of time, I'm just going to push these over here. Now you do want to scoop out those seeds. So just like any other squash, pumpkins, anything, especially winter squashes, they're going to have seeds that you don't want to eat as is. You could roast these like you do, pumpkin seeds, butternut squash seeds, anything like that you can roast, but we won't be doing that today, but you certainly could. So I'm just going to take my spoon and kind of work around cutting out the seeds, scoop them out. And you don't want to take out too much of the inside because that's where the spaghetti is. Now, of course, we love regular spaghetti too. We did a whole class about spaghetti and pasta last month. So you'll see the ring here. I'm going to plop that on a baking sheet that has some parchment. So that, okay. Scoop out those seeds. All right. So, definitely a different way to cut them. I'll just show you. So there they are. And I'm probably going to give them a little spray with just some cooking spray and maybe a touch of salt. Oof, that was the whole big thing. That was the wrong side of the salt. We're going to put that in the sink. And then really however else you want to season them, you could leave it really basic, or I love paprika, so I'm just going to do a touch on that. Okay. You could do garlic powder, onion powder, whatever you want. I'm going to stick this on the bottom of my oven. Actually, no, I'm going to put it on the top. We're going to set this aside for a moment, and I'm going to do the chicken. So as I mentioned, I'm using the Nature's Promise chicken breasts. I'm going to put on some gloves. And I actually did already marinate these. You can roast them completely plain if you'd like, or just very basically seasoned, depending on your taste preferences. We actually have a Taste of Inspirations marinade. Now it is carne asada, which is typically with beef. However, I thought the flavors like ancho chilies, what else? Like lime juice, more paprika, because I love it. I thought that flavor would be really nice with the chicken, with the salsa. So that's what I did. Again, you could just do salt, pepper, little olive oil, paprika, lime juice, whatever you want to do if you just want to do it that way. These are the little baggies that the chicken come in. They're very small. They're such a perfect serving size. I think it's 4 ounces. So really nice. But so I used 4, so I have 2 left in here. And I did marinate them in the fridge. I think I put them in at like 9 a.m. I wouldn't, these are really delicate. I don't know if I would marinate them overnight. That might be too long. It would probably be fine, but it might break them down a little bit too much. So it smells really good. So I am just going to take them out of the marinade, let them drip off a little, and put them on a prepared sheet here. Okay. And we're going to discard this marinade because it's been touching raw chicken. So we're not going to use that for anything. If you want to baste the chicken with more marinade later, use whatever's in the bottle. I think for a pound of meat, you typically want like a cup of marinade, give or take. So you should have some left in the bottle. So I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to give my hands a quick little wash, but we are going to put this in the oven. So 425 for 18 to 20 minutes, really for both the spaghetti squash and the chicken, because they're both quite small. So that should be plenty of time. So I have, let's see, alrighty. Oop. My oven has a thing where you have to put how many layers you're cooking on. All right, I'm going to move this aside. Give my hands a wash. Right. I'm going to wear more gloves when I do the salsa. Mostly, now jalapenos are definitely not the spiciest of the peppers in the world. However, they still can have some heat. So I definitely don't want to get any of that in my eyes or anything like that. So I'm going to wear another pair of gloves to do all of our chopping. Now that the chicken and the spaghetti squash are in the oven, really all that's left is to make the grape salsa. And that's what we're gonna do. We've got plenty of chopping to do. So I have a new cutting board here. I have a nice big bowl that I'm gonna put all of my ingredients in. And I do want to show you. So this is a bag of you say they're white grapes. These are the grapes that are on sale this week, one of the two. But if you're looking, granted, you now know that 99% of grapes grown in the United States are grown in California. If you see, produce of USA, also another pretty good indicator that they were grown in California. Okay, we are going to get started with our grape salsa. So we need about 2 cups of, it says red grapes, but again, I'm going to do kind of both. All right, let me get this. I did already, you can see all my produce here. I did already rinse off my grapes, the jalapeno, and the cilantro. I do also have the uh, green onions here. I actually put them in a little jar. They were looking a little dry. So I put them in a jar with some water, which if you cut off the tops and you kind of leave the white part with the root, you can typically grow more scallions or green onions from those. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, so the recipe calls for 2 of the green onions. So that is what we will do. Cut them. Now, so you could take, maybe I should have cut it a little bit bigger, but you can put that root end in a little glass of water and they will grow. And I've done that many times. So kind of regenerate the food that you already bought. So we're gonna slice, just depends how big you would like the scallions to be. And this calls for scallions. However, if you like red onion in your salsa or you want a white onion, you certainly could do that too. But I think for a delicate salsa like this with the grapes, the green onion or scallion, whatever you like to call them, works very nicely. 2 does not seem like a lot. You can always add more, but we're following the recipe to start. All right, so scallions in our bowl. I'll move my bowl over here so you can see it. Everything smells so delicious. Then we are going to let's do our jalapeno. So we're going to cut the jalapeno. I'm going to cut it in half. And you're going to want to scrape out all of these seeds and the core. So granted, if you like a lot more heat, certainly you could leave that in. Although the seeds are not very fun to eat in a salsa, but a lot of that heat is going to be in that core too. So removing it will make it a little bit more mild. If you don't want any spice, certainly you can leave this out. You could just do a little bit of green pepper, like a bell pepper, which won't have any heat, or a poblano pepper, whatever you want to do. But I don't love a ton of heat, but I think a jalapeno is nice for a salsa. Okay. Oh, you could also make a guacamole with grapes. I think that would be delicious. Okay. Some of those seeds off of here. And so I'm just going to cut into big strips, or not big strips, thin strips, really. Like maybe matchstick, kind of like these. Like these. Do it on both sides. Okay. Then I'm going to flip them over and just kind of chop into however big dice you would like. I'm going to do them kind of tiny, like smaller even than the green onion. Or yeah, green onion. I said the correct thing. I questioned. Okay. Beautiful. It's going to have so many nice colors. Alrighty. Now we're running low on time, so I'm going to start chopping the rest of our stuff. Calls for 2 tablespoons-ish of cilantro, which again, I love cilantro, so I'm going to do a little bit more. This is definitely more than 2 tablespoons. To me, it smells so fresh and amazing. But again, if you are somebody who does not like cilantro, that tastes like soap or whatever, you could use parsley, you could leave it out. Yeah. Then all we have left are our grapes. So the grapes, they're so nice. I already gave them a rinse. You want to do that right before you're going to be making your salsa. So I'm just going to cut them in half, kind of like that. And make sure you take off any of the stems, which I missed that one somehow. For the green grape that's like really, really big, I might cut that into threes. Just kind of depends. Alrighty. I know we're right at time. So I'm gonna finish up my salsa and plate everything. And if you want to stick around, I know we're at time, you can join me to talk about the circular. Because I know some of the things were good sales for Halloween, but we still have some good stuff going on. All right. So I've got almost enough grapes in here to kind of just show you what I'm doing. And I will finish this up after we're finished today. In here, so there's not a lot of grapes right now. I'm going to add more. But for the sake of time, I do want to show you. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of a red wine vinegar. You certainly could do apple cider, a white, whatever you want to do. I'm just doing a red wine vinegar today. And then it calls for a teaspoon of minced garlic, which I'm just doing our jarlic today. About a teaspoon, however much you like. Oh, it smells very good, actually. Okay. So mix all that together. Again, I'm going to add way more grapes. It calls for 2 cups of grapes. But I do want to show you how this looks plated before we get to our circular. So on a plate here, I will show you, I did already roast a spaghetti squash and a chicken breast. I had them over here. So this is what my spaghetti squash looks like cut in half like this. So when you kind of take the spaghetti squash like that, they're so cute. So these teeny tiny ones can be a perfect like portion yourself. So then what you'll do once it's roasted and cooled a little so you can handle it, you're going to take a fork and just kind of scrape inside so that the spaghetti strands kind of flake apart. This one got a little dry just sitting there, but you can start to kind of see all of the spaghetti noodles. Spaghetti squash noodles, I will say. Now you can take these out of the squash and put it on the plate. However, I think it works as its own nice little bowl. And I will show you the chicken. It smells amazing. So I'm going to plate that right on top. I'm not very good at plating, to be perfectly frank. That is never one of my strong suits. But I'm going to do that. And I'm going to put a little bit of salsa, making sure we get plenty of those red California grapes on there. And honestly, I might add a little bit more liquid or maybe squash a couple of the grapes to make it a little juicy. But look at, oh, it all smells so good. I'm so excited. I don't know if you can see that. How fresh and nice, all of those different colors. Woo. But we have our chicken, our grape salsa, and our spaghetti squash. So lots of good stuff going on. Oh, it smells delicious. I'm going to plate it a little bit prettier for our photo, but it smells so, so delicious. Now, I'm going to move everything out of my way. And I'm going to get to our circular. But if you have to drop off, not a problem. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And hopefully you're excited to learn more all about grapes from California throughout this week. But I hope you take care. Thank you.